Welcome to NTF Live, everyone. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Judy Dukeshire. I am the founder and CEO for Nursing the Future. We certainly have quite a group of registrants today, so I was trying to give everybody a little bit of an opportunity to come in. But I think we'll get started. I wanted to introduce Wendy Dixon-Jewett, and I met Wendy about 2 months ago, Wendy, and it was an absolute pleasure to have been introduced to her work. And I thought this would be a great platform for her to share that with all of us. So Wendy's a nurse, an educator, and the founder of Brainstorm Soft Skill Solutions. With nearly 4 decades of frontline and leadership experience across acute care, long-term care, mental health, and corrections, Wendy teaches nurses how to stay grounded and confident in emotionally escalating situations. Wendy is the creator of Universal Precautions for Emotional and Behavioral Dysregulation, an evidence-based framework that equips healthcare professionals to regulate themselves, to de-escalate others, and to protect their professional identities. Known for her humor, honesty, and heart, Wendy blends science, storytelling, and soul to turn soft skills into superpowers. Wendy, welcome.
Thank you so much, Judy, and thank you, Nursing the Future, for giving me this opportunity to speak to your audience and reach some human beings and some nurses with these ideas. So I think a really important place to start is kind of, for me, where it all began. So one of my earliest memories as a student nurse was standing beside a 65-year-old man recovering from an appendectomy. And my hands were shaking. I was going to do a dressing and my stomach was flipping. And I was trying desperately to sound confident. So I said, "Good morning, my name is Wendy and I'm your student nurse today. I think you can all relate to that." Well, he didn't even look at me. He just says like, "Just do what you need to do and get out of here." And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm halfway through the dressing change. He winced and he snapped, "That hurt, you stupid bitch." And I just froze. So no one had prepared me for that. Like in school, the patients in lab were always so polite and cooperative. So I stumbled through the dressing change and literally escaped the room, right? So my instructor, and I have some great recollections of instructors. So my instructor put both hands on my shoulders and she said, "Wendy, if you're going to be a nurse, you need to grow a thicker skin." And I'm like, okay, but no one told me how to do that. So then I graduated and I moved across the country. And within a week of my first job, the director of care yelled at me in front of families and everybody at the desk simply for asking a question. And just to make her point, she assigned me the most difficult resident in the building. So let's call him like Bear Braddock. That's not his name, of course, but Bear was a grizzlied ex-Marine who chain smoked pipes in his hospital bed. Yes, this was the thing, and insulted me for a solid 45 minutes every single morning. Like one day, after weeks of verbal shots fired at my dignity, I snapped. I ripped off my gloves and said something I'm not going to repeat and I'm definitely not proud of. And he looked at me like for the first time. He took a long pull on his pipe and he softened. He says, "For such a little thing, you sure have a potty mouth." And he never yelled at me again. I became one of the nurses he treated with respect. And as relieved as I was, I also felt ashamed because yes, my temper tantrum worked, but it was not the nurse I wanted to be. And that became my turning point. It was the first time I truly understood I didn't need a thicker skin. I needed skills, like skills for emotional self-protection, skills for verbal de-escalation, skills for setting limits on inappropriate behavior without losing myself in the process. And that turning point eventually became my life's work. So today, when I stand in front of new nurses, I stand in front of nurses, I teach people, I think back to that trembling student who thought she was the problem, and she wasn't weak, she wasn't broken. she simply hadn't been taught the job actually requires these skills, and we're not doing a good job of teaching it. So that's why I'm here today, because nurses don't need thicker skin. We need better armor, strategies, and skills, and it is teachable. So without further ado, I am going to start my presentation. So the name of our presentation today is Skill Up, Mindset as Safety Gear for Emotionally Escalating Situations. So this is part of my Universal Precautions for Emotional and Behavioral Dysregulation, a framework I have created for gaining mastery in this undertrained area. So just like we have protocols for bloodborne pathogens, we need protocols for emotional safety as well. Let's start with the truth. Healthcare is a violent industry. So we've got lots of research in the nursing literature. And so these numbers come all the way back from Boyd in 1995, Spector in 2014, the National Nurses United in 2023, confirms the problem isn't getting better. And nurses are an oppressed workforce, so we are at the bottom of the power ladder. So often we can't push back without fear of retaliation about people maybe that we need to push back against. So a lot of times we'll push back or be abusive to each other. That's called horizontal violence, and Kathleen Bartholomew has written a wonderful book on that. We also know from the literature that more than 50% of nurses don't feel competent responding to verbal abuse. And the amount of verbal abuse experienced is significantly rated to intent to leave. So this isn't just about safety, it's retention. So if we just look at the numbers on this slide, the reality, 36.4% have been physically abused. They have experienced physical violence. And that's what we talk about in the literature, physical and non-physical violence. 69.9% have been verbally abused in the past 5 days. So that's significant. 80% have witnessed violence. So if it's not them themselves, 80% have witnessed violence acts. And then, of course, when it comes to the retention crisis, 42.5% of nurses are considering leaving the workforce. And for early career nurses, this number is astounding. 60% of new nurses leave within the first month. Now, when I went back to the original literature on that, I think the first place I saw that number cited was with Kathleen Bartholomew, but it seems to be holding steady. Now, what happens is they're not necessarily leaving the career entirely, but they're not staying at the bedside, just as I didn't stay at the bedside. So we're experiencing people not at the bedside, and unfortunately, that is where a lot of our healthcare is delivered. So that is a significant problem. So everyone agrees we need training, but even when I was doing my master's thesis on this topic, no one could really agree as to what kind of training or what to teach. So it is really my work. I'm hoping to fill a piece of that gap. So the training gap. This is a quote from Aggression and Violence in Healthcare by Patterson and Turnbull. And here's what most people miss. Yes, we need to know what to say. There needs to be things there, but it's really about our personal state. It's about our nervous system not being hijacked, because if it's hijacked, no words are going to save you. Okay, so we're really focusing a lot today on mindset or psychological self-protection, because 80%, it's the part that makes the skills work. Your brain can't work if your nervous system gets hijacked. So what Patterson and Turnbull said is the skills employed are neither intuitive or instinctual. They require skilled teaching and supervised practice. So a lot of training today focuses on what to say and not necessarily saying the right things. But today we're more focused on who you need to be as you move through it, although we are absolutely going to get into what you need to say as well today. So today's framework is 80% mindset, 20% skill. So these are the three focus areas we're going to focus on today. Number one is psychological self-protection, because if your nervous system is not online, if your brain is not online, everything else falls apart. The second thing is CNS override protocols. So it's like, how do we keep our nervous system under control? How do we stay in control of it? So some new science on that. And number three, pattern interruption techniques. So how do we interrupt the arousal, the anger, in others and in ourselves so that we can stay grounded. So let me challenge you about how you think about emotions. So blood and emotions are ever present. When they're contained, they're not a threat. We need them. They're life-giving, right? We can't live without emotions. We can't live without blood. But when released into the environment, both can cause significant risk. So let's just put a couple of answers in the chat. How many of you feel adequately trained to deal with blood spills? Just put a 1 in the chat if you feel adequately trained to deal with blood spills. And I can't see the chat, so maybe Judy can see what we've got going on there. How many of you really, just think about it then, just reflect on it. How many feel adequately trained in emotional spills? So I think that's where the big learning training gap is we're not adequately trained to deal with intense emotions. We've been thinking about it all wrong. So that's what we're trying to fix today. So if you look at blood, you got hepatitis, HIV, Ebola, malaria. You're trained for blood spills, but emotion, aggression, violence, spite, revenge, that's what we're training for today. Okay, so we talked about both are essential to life and both can be dangerous. So Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote this quote in Man's Search for Meaning, and it has been one of my anchors for many, many, many years. And that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. So we've got something that happens to us, some stimulus, something is going on in our environment. And then there is a space. And that's when we can choose our response. Now, I realize in serious mental illness or other things, we always don't have the ability to choose a response, but 99% of the time, we do have an ability to choose our response. That is where our power lies. And Viktor Frankl even said it's where our freedom lies. That is where our freedom lies. It is so important to think about that. So everything we do today is about widening that space so you can choose your response instead of being hijacked by reaction. No, that was mindset shift number 1, sorry. So go to mindset shift number 2, protect your identity boundary. So this is your first line of psychological self-protection. When someone lashes out, your nervous system asks, what did I do wrong? But here's the reframe. It's not personal, it's patterned. So it's a predictable response rooted in someone else's dysregulation. They're not describing you, they're exposing their own emotional overload. So guard your identity boundary like your life depends on it, because definitely your peace does. And honestly, if you can stay grounded in your own professional identity, you may save your own life. Like, this is not a small thing. Healthcare workers are being harmed at work today. So we really have to think of this seriously. So these are a couple of my phrase anchors that I have hung on to as soon as I heard them, and I use them in the moment, and I have them at my ready all the time. So what you think of me is none of my business. So when someone's coming in hot at you, telling you who they think you are, I think this to myself. Now, if I'm being really cheeky, I might say it out loud, but not very often. So I just think it to myself. What you think of me is none of my business. And that was a book written by Terry Cole Whittaker, actually. But I love that phrase. That phrase gets me lots of places. And the other one, of course, is Eleanor Roosevelt's, no one can make you feel inferior without your permission. There is a decision there. Just keep that in mind. So the whole thing is do not personalize. So you need a lot of tips and tricks and phrase anchors so that you do not personalize, because we all have a negativity bias. We can hear 1,000 wonderful things about us. And if one person says this, it's sticky, it sticks to us. There's really good science on this, right? It's those ants, those automatic negative thoughts. You have to be aware of your negativity bias and you have to work against it. Okay, so these are some phrases that will help you. Do not personalize. It's not personal, it's patterned. And guard your identity boundary. Like, you need your peace. So it's really important to think of your identity boundary. There is only one you. You have one thumbprint, one fingerprint. You are unique. There is no one else in the world like you. So remember that. You're here for a reason. You're here to bring your skills, your talents, and your ability. So just remember that. Protect your identity boundary. You decide what gets in and what doesn't. So Dr. Karen Blase, co-founder of the National Implementation Research Network, a good friend and mentor of mine, taught me a lot about behavioral management and leadership and just staying grounded in yourself. And, professionalism isn't a badge, it's a behavior. So will you always get things right? No, you're human. But when you know better, you do better. I got that from Karen, and that's grace. And you want to extend it to others and extend it to yourself. So I love her definition of professional. A professional speaks and acts in right and appropriate ways, even when you don't feel like it. And even though there's a big controversy out there about whether nurses are a profession, you are a profession and you are a professional. And there's nowhere I've worked that nurses don't set the tone for the entire unit. So remember, your feelings are valid, your emotions matter, and they deserve acknowledgement, absolutely. But they don't get to drive. You remain in control of your actions and your responses. So we all need grace. You need to give yourself grace, and you also need to give other people grace. We live in a high-pressured world, in a system that's crumbling and quaking, and people are going to lose it. So we need grace. We need compassion. We need to expect imperfection, and we need to be prepared to give ourselves and others second chances. That's just what the mindset we need to be in. So mindset shift number 4, keep your power. When someone is coming at you sharp, remember, they're throwing what they can't carry. Their anger isn't yours to metabolize. Their insecurity isn't yours to fix. You don't have to catch what they throw down. That's not avoidance. That's containment. And silence is actually one of my verbal de-escalation secrets, because if it's chosen from strength, it is a powerful verbal de-escalation strategy, okay? So their load is not yours to lift. Their chaos is not yours to absorb. Their dysregulation is not yours to personalize, okay? So keep your power. Don't give it away. Don't let someone else's words throw off your day. Mindset shift number 5, not everything deserves your energy. You don't get a medal for the last word. You don't have to prove your point to protect your peace. You're not required to attend every argument you're invited to. Some invitations are best left unopened. And again, silence isn't weakness, it's mastery. And I want you to hear this because this is really important. Let other people battle their own shadows without recruiting you into their darkness. They are revealing themselves. Whatever is going on, whatever they're saying, they're revealing themselves, they're revealing their inability to deal with whatever's going on in their life. Don't let them recruit you into their darkness. Stay grounded in your own identity. Mindset shift number 6, and we're going to get into this a bit more, but it happens so fast, a word, a tone, a glance, and suddenly your chest tightens. And that is the moment, the single breath before your spirit snaps. You have to choose to breathe, okay? Not because breathing solves everything, but it gives you back your power before you give it away to someone else. And the breath is what transforms reflex into response. Okay, so the reflex is emotional, it's raw, and a response is mindful, it's grounded, and it's intentional. Okay, so again, a reflex is automatic, a response is intentional. So that's where we want to go. We want to get out of the autonomic and we want to put it into manual overdrive. So breathe before you break. Mindset shift number 7, you need to meet insults with compassion. Okay, the sting of an insult is sharp. The human instinct is definitely to fight back, but most insults don't need retaliation. They need compassion, and not for their sake, but for your sake. So a soul full of self-respect doesn't insult. If you're feeling grounded, if you're feeling secure, if you're feeling safe, you don't have the need to insult other people. So a person secure in themselves never aims to dim other people. They just don't. So when someone lashes out, they're not showing power, they're revealing their pain. See it in that way, and you won't take it personally. You'll see it as a flare from a heart just really struggling to stay afloat. So really, when a person says to you, often says more about what's hurting inside them than what's broken inside you. And I like to think of insults as confessions. Insults are confessions about a person's inner landscape, okay? So compassion doesn't excuse disrespect. It doesn't. It rises above the need to match it. That's what's going on with compassion. So mindset shift number 8 is about peaceful detachment. And this is something I really had to work on because honestly, I was living vicariously through everyone else's grief, pain, loss. It took me quite a while and really a lot of spiritual practice to really kind of get that peaceful detachment because nursing is such an emotional load. So peaceful detachment is compassionate clarity. It means I no longer lose myself to manage someone else's chaos or pain or grief. Okay. So I'm not walking away from people. I just need to walk towards peace because we need to bring peace into the room in order to co regulate anyone. Okay. So I'm reclaiming my focus and especially my emotional bandwidth. I need to save my emotional bandwidth for my own life. It's my oxygen. So not every fire needs my fuel. As someone said to me, Wendy, who made you general manager of the universe? It's like, well, maybe no one, right? Like as nurses, a lot of times we feel really, really over responsible, okay? And not every storm requires my presence. I don't have to come in and save everyone. Real strength is knowing when to engage and just when to exhale, right? Just exhale. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Okay. I don't need to get involved in anything. And that took a long time for me to understand. I teach something called the law of subtraction, which I think is far more important than the law of attraction. What are you going to remove from your life that's draining your emotional bandwidth? Okay. So detachment is not giving up, it's letting go. It's the moment you stop gripping the rope that's been cutting your hand. Okay. It's not apathy, it's discernment. And it's not distance, it's dignity. So let's just look at our brain's operating system. So your brain runs on a million, but I'll talk about 2. So the amygdala, your caveman, is ancient, it's primal, it's always scanning for threats. It's always trying to figure out what's going on. So when chaos erupts, it grabs the controls really fast, okay? It grabs the controls. The prefrontal cortex, your Zen man, is more evolved, grounded, capable of leadership. Stanford neurobiologist Robert Sapolsky, the quintessential authority on human behavior, says the frontal cortex makes you do the harder thing when it's the right thing to do. Say that again. The frontal cortex makes you do the harder thing when it's the right thing to do. So that's our target. You want to get into the Zen man mode and you want to help other people get into Zen mode too. So there again, you've got caveman is the amygdala, it's the hippocampus, it's the limbic system, it's reactive, it's fear driven, it's survival mode. Super, super important. Super important. If you need to save your life, absolutely. 99% of the time, maybe more, our life isn't in danger. So what we need to do is we need to manually find ways to take control and get into our prefrontal cortex. I call it our Zen man. That's where we're grounded, we're visionary, we're regulated, impulse control, we know consequences, we can analyze. That's where we need to be. Okay, so once we get into the prefrontal cortex, we can also help others get back into their prefrontal cortex when they've been hijacked. So the first thing I want to talk about, and you may have heard probably about this, but I'm going to talk about it not from a trauma-informed perspective, but from a protecting yourself perspective. So Dr. Stephen Porges gave us polyvagal theory. So your nervous system constantly scans for safety or danger, called something called neuroception. So this happens faster than you can think. Your body decides whether to stay calm or connected or flip into fight, flight, freeze before your conscious mind catches up. So this is why psychological self-protection isn't just emotional intelligence, it's nervous system literacy. Okay, you have to know what's going on in your body and you need to start taking over manual control and help your nervous system say, thank you very much, but I got this. Okay, so how can we do this even for ourselves? Not just for others, we're doing it for everyone. So number 1 is social engagement, connection and leadership, right? So we're going to go into mobilization, fight or flight. Are we going to do that? No. Shut down, freeze, and numb. Okay, so it's our threat detector. That's the first thing we need to know and understand is we have this built-in threat detector, the polyvagal systems, okay? They're all connected to help us navigate the world. Okay, so what are we gonna do with this information? We're gonna learn how to use our vagal brake. The vagal brake is your precision engineered control system. It's part of your parasympathetic nervous system. So it's the myelinated vagus nerve that acts like a safety mechanism connected to actually your heart. You don't control it consciously, but you can influence it through breath, through voice, through facial expression. And the vagus nerve increases calming signals during what? Exhalation. Your best vagal brake is built into things you already do, like the exasperated mother. What does the exasperated mother or father do? They go, right? Short in breath, long exhale. Now, we're not going to obviously do the sigh as a nurse, but being aware that an inhale with a longer expiratory hail is putting on our vagal brake. So what does our vagal brake do? And there's other things I'm going to teach you. It slows the heart rate, it regulates emotion, and it prevents fishtailing into fight, flight, or freeze. So how do we activate it? Number one, the breath. So we're going to inhale for 4, exhale for 6 to 8. The voice is going to be calm, melodic tone, and the face, soften your expression. Okay, pay attention. How are your eyes? Soften your eyes. A little bit of an up curve on your lips. We'll go into that. But this vagal brake keeps you from breaking. Okay, so we're even going to go into this breath a little deeper. But first, we'll talk about the social engagement system. So Deb Dana works closely with Dr. Porges at the Polyvagal Institute. So when we're in ventral vagal state, we're calm, we're present, we're connected. Our face, voice, and eyes naturally signal safety. These aren't just polite postures or gestures, they're biological invitations to co-regulate. So we don't want to get creepy in this. We don't want to be like, anything like that. We just want to have an awareness of it, right? So it's the muscles in your face, your eyes, your ears, and your voice are all tied to the same brain stem that regulates your vagal brake. So let's just look at this. Deb Dana is a licensed clinical social worker, and she said, we become the safety cue someone else may desperately need. We need to let people know they're safe because everything that's going on is part of their threat mechanism. So your safety signals, slight tilt of the head. I always tilt my head naturally. It's actually a bit of a problem. I think I walk around like this. I don't know why, but non-threatening eye contact. So you're not glaring, you're just looking at people. You want to have that calm, clear tone and a barely there smile. So just make sure I have a flat affect. I have a poker face, so I have to be aware of that. And if I am in really intense situations, I just make sure that barely there upturn of my lips so that I'm not looking like a threat, and take a deliberate pause. Take an uncomfortable pause, okay? These aren't fluff. They're biological hacks, okay? We want this, one of the ways we can start pumping our vagal brake. So Dr. Dan Siegel coined window of tolerance, and if you've taken trauma-informed care, you've heard about the window of tolerance. So it's the biological arousal zone for nervous system regulation. So there's also Pat Ogden and Jana Fisher. They expanded this whole thing into trauma treatment. So inside your window, you can think, you can feel, and you can function. Healthcare workers get tested daily. We get thrown out of it because our survival brain hijacks us, okay? So we need tools because every day and throughout our career, and especially coming out of COVID, our window shrinks. And I know there was one time in my career when I was a certified therapeutic teaching parent, I was a therapeutic foster mom. I had such an expansive, and I hadn't heard the term, but now I know it was a window of tolerance. And one of the kids in the group home, who is now my oldest daughter, who's 44, hard to believe, she was 11 when she came to us. One day when she was spitting in my face and I was not reacting to her, I continued to intervene and do teaching interactions and try to help her come under control. She stopped and she said, "You're a robot. You're not even human." And that was because that was the part of me, that window of tolerance. I just had the skills and the ability, because I had learned them over time, not to be reactive, because I was the professional in the room and I needed to professionally help her get her behavior under control. But after COVID, like through all the things, and I was nursing faculty at the time, so I wasn't even in the middle of all of it. I was on the periphery, but I was terrified for my students. Didn't know what was going to happen. We had so much churn. I was just finding I was getting triggered all the time out of my window of tolerance. And I found that with my colleagues as well. And we had the discussion about it. And this is why, because through all of that trauma we went through in that collapse period of time, our window of tolerance had collapsed. So I have had to spend the last 3 years really expanding my window of tolerance again, because the triggers were hard and they held on and I had to mindfully come out of them. So we need to learn these things. So let's talk about what is the window of tolerance. So I like to think of it actually as paved highway. So we're driving down the road, right? So we want to stay on the road and hopefully in our lane, we're staying in our lane. But if we go too far, we hit rumble strips, right? We hit rumble strips. So on one side, if we go past the rumble strips, we go into hyperarousal, fight or flight, okay? On the other side of the road, if we even go over there, maybe go in the other ditch, we go into hypoarousal, we shut down. So the hyperarousal, yelling, screaming, throwing things, not in control. Hypoarousal, we're laying in bed, we're under the blankets, we're in a fetal position. And freeze is when both are going on at the same time, and that's really difficult to get a hold of. That's when everything's jammed. So trauma shrinks your window over time. So we want to stay in the window, inside the window, in the lanes, hopefully our own lane, because when we're there, we've got clarity, we've got control, and we've got connection. So we all want to stay in our window of tolerance, not only stay in it, but figure out how can I expand my window of tolerance so that I'm always staying professional and in a leadership role. And I'll tell you, when you learn to do this, people notice, because so few people truly have these skills. They will start tapping you on the shoulder for all kinds of positions, as I was tapped, because even though I didn't know the window of tolerance, this is exactly what was going on. I could manage difficult situations. So let's go into the CNS override protocol number 1. So this is, how do we take manual control? How do we pump the vagal brake? So we want to activate the parasympathetic system, label the threat, reframe the story. So this is all about the breathing, and the breathing is so important. Now, when I think of that highway and staying in my lane, I actually say to myself, when someone's triggering me, agitating me, annoying me, and I find myself, my sympathetic nervous system kicking in, I literally say, oh, yeah, I'm hitting the rumble strips. Like I literally go into all the strategies, and I've had to use them. I've had to use all of them because my window of tolerance was depleted significantly. So I've had to use them, continue to use them. They're improving, but let's get back. So there's a couple things I want you to add to the breath. So you inhale through your nose, and believe me, when you're in the middle of a heated interaction, this 10 seconds seems like 10 minutes, okay? So you need to do it. It's also the pause. So just breathe in through your nose. Let's try it together. 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I actually hold at the top. And when I hold, I do, this is my amygdala trying to help me. And then as I exhale, breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As I exhale, I say the phrase, I don't need to fight, I need to lead. So combining an anchoring phrase with this polyvagal break of breath. Now, you've probably seen trending breath work. People who have gotten into breath work are just astounded how transformational it is. So you can go down that. This is just one tool, but people have literally made careers of it, transformed their lives with breath work. So just keep that in mind. Do the inhale for 4, take a pause, say your anchoring phrase, and then as you're exhaling, say, I don't need to fight, I need to lead. And then you can start being responsive. One breath, one reframe, a total reset. Okay, so let's talk about CNS override protocol number 2. This one integrates a few different things. So when you're spiraling in rumination, so let's say you've had a really bad shift, someone got in your head, a colleague, a doctor, a patient, a family member, they're in your head, right? And you can't seem to get them out. What you need to do is you need to catch the loop, okay? You need to do a pattern disruption on yourself. So in your head, and if you're alone in your bedroom, you can say it out loud, but in your head, you just say, stop, stop, stop. You know, when you get into those loops, we all do it, we get into those loops. So just say in your head, stop, stop, stop. And then the second thing you lap on top of that, you layer on top, is you actually visualize a stop sign. The red, the white, the angles, just visualize the stop sign. Because when you do that, you are activating different parts of your brain. Okay, you're kicking it out of the neural pathways it is, the rumination pathways, and you're actually forcing it to take an off ramp. So you're forcing it into the occipital lobe, the cerebellum, you know, your visual centers, right? Okay, and as you're doing it again, choose a reframe. You get it to stop, and then you do a reframe. I trained for this. I can handle this. I'm a professional. And the other thing is, like, your brain's like a misbehaving dog. You need to put it back on its leash. It just doesn't get to run wild. Most people let their brain, the narrator, I call it the narrator, run wild. The narrator is not you. You get to pull it back. You get to jerk on that leash, okay? You get to train it. And it's your responsibility to train it because no one else can hear your narrator. Only you can hear your narrator. And you need to understand you can get control of your narrator. Okay, it's simple, it's effective, and it's immediate. And if you're in deep rumination, you might need to do it many times. But if you do, believe me, you will get out of your rumination. You will be able to take control. CNS override protocol number 3, unflappable nurse mode. So you need to move into unflappable nurse mode. So research shows the best way to be able to go into intense situations is if you practice beforehand. This isn't me just saying so. This is in Sapolsky's book. If you want to read it to him, it's about 100, 800, 900 pages. I mean, he's got all the research in there. So when I'm heading into chaos, I prepare beforehand. I do visualizations beforehand, and that is something that I get my students to do, is visualize it. It's the same mental rehearsal that firefighters do, elite athletes do, right? And now nurses can do to stay regulated under fire when things are getting hot, okay? So what you want to do is visualize a glowing lever, and I have written on this lever, and in my mind, it's always on my right side, and it's red, and I don't know why it's red, but it is red, and it says unflappable nurse mode. And I literally see it as I'm going into a room, and I see myself pulling that lever, turning it on. And the other thing is, the second thing is, I pull it, and then I square my shoulders. Another way to engage the vagal brake is actually the Wonder Woman stand. So you're not going to go like this because that could be threatening to people. But one of the things you can do for sure is just make sure your shoulders are back, your head is up, right? And that actually activates your parasympathetic rest and digest. So pull your shoulders back. And then again, our breath, right? Breath. Okay. So before you go into any room, you've done this. You've activated this. So this is the state you're walking in the room. And what I've always done is when I'm practicing this, because I learned it in neuro-linguistic programming, although lots of people have debunked that and say it's a bunch of poo-poo, I have used this for decades, which is when I'm practicing, I anchor my thumb. I do it to that finger, whatever finger that is, the middle finger. Instead of going the other way, I go this way, if you know what I mean. And that anchor, I believe, gets me into that state really quickly. So when I rehearse it, when I'm rehearsing the unflappable nurse mode, because no one even notices when you're doing this. And as nurses, we want to find all those vagal breaks that people aren't going to think, what is she doing, right? I mean, sometimes we might have to if it's really bad, but most of the time we can pump our vagal brake and no one knows we're pumping our vagal brake. So we want to rehearse it until it's a reflex, okay? Like a muscle. CNS override protocol number 4. We want to name it to tame it. Now, this comes directly from cognitive diffusion from acceptance and commitment therapy by Stephen Hayes. So it creates that distance between you and your thoughts. So again, you're not your thoughts. You're the observer of them, okay? You can take control of them. So when you're hijacked by shame, self-doubt, your inner critic, number one, you want to notice the thought. So if you're saying, I'm a loser, say you're saying, I'm a loser, okay? Create that distance by saying, I'm having the thought that I'm a loser. We're creating that distance, okay? And then the optional number 3 is, thanks, brain, noted, okay? And then bug off, get out of my head, okay? So you are not your thoughts, you are the observer of them, okay? So that's a really important thing to take away. Okay, so what we're going to talk about now is 10 verbal de-escalation secrets. So these are part of my methodology. And I'm going to tell you how I arrived at these top 10. It's like, I'd say David Letterman, but most of you probably don't know who that is. Top 10 list. So what happened is I did a master's thesis on organizational leadership in the frontline nurse, how to provide quality, respectful care to verbally abusive people or patients. And what I did to do that research is I gathered managers, a group of focus group managers, a group of nurses that identified themselves as someone who's really good with difficult people. They're the person you call in, and you probably got them on your unit. There's always people on the unit say, will you come help me with this? You're so good at this, dealing with difficult people. Okay, so I called them into a room, but what happened with them is the research didn't really reveal a lot about what they did because they were unconsciously competent. They didn't really know what they did. And that's not unusual because it's just part of intuition and who we are and how we grew up. But what I did in the field and working is I just took note of people that did things really well. So none of these words are going to be new to you. None of these concepts are going to be new to you. But when you start using them with intention and on purpose, you will start to really see the magic of them. So I got all of these from nurses that I worked with or managers or leaders or human beings that showed me how good they were with these kind of secrets. So I do entire modules on each of these secrets and we practice them and we utilize them. But today, just knowing them in their simplicity and what you're trying to accomplish, you can start to use them. So with apology, all you need to be is sincere and genuine. I owe you an apology. Because if someone's revving up for a fight and they're really angry and they're calling you names and they're hostile and you're not reactive, you're not defensive, and you're not making a ton of excuses, you come in with this, it's unexpected. And what happens when you do something unexpected in these escalating scenarios, and these are arousal issues. If someone says, I'm going to go murder Wendy Dixon, the nurse today, and that's called instrumental violence, I'm not going to stop that because it has nothing to do with arousal. But these work very well in arousal when people are just really upset about something and they're out of their depth. So what happens is the brain has a righting reflex. And the brain will right itself. It will actually get out of the threat of amygdala, limbic flooding, and the hippocampus. It'll get out of that if you give it enough space. So what happens when you do this? It's unexpected, and all of a sudden it's like it'll right and it'll start going back to the prefrontal cortex. Of course, if the prefrontal cortex is online, if you're deep in psychosis, deep in brain injury, like maybe the prefrontal cortex is not going to come online, but I'll tell you, having worked with these populations, especially I'm specialized in psychosis recovery, being a decent human being goes a long way, and using these still goes a long way. It's the foundation. So I owe you an apology. There's a lot other to apology. You want to make sure it's not a throwaway, I'm sorry you're so upset, because there's no exchange of shame and power in that. You have to take the shame onto yourself. You have to accept responsibility for whatever's going on or a piece of it. And that allows the person to start calming down. Appreciation is someone's yelling at you, say, thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. I really appreciate it. Simple statement, right? You didn't go into correction. You didn't go into judging them. You didn't go into fixing their behavior, because any of you that are married out there or have children, it's like, I can't even fix their behavior, and I've got a lot of levers to pull. Why am I trying to fix the behavior of 4 million people in the world? Like, you can't. It's exhausting. So all you want to do is give them space so they can self-correct. Agreement, you're right, right? I agree with you. Simple. Concern, are you okay? I'm concerned about you. Distraction, just use something in the environment, or this is one of my favorite ones because I'm very creative. So I can come up with lots of things. There was a kid that was literally beating me up, and he was only 12, but man, he was strong. And he had grabbed a plant and he had a basket, and he was beating me up, and I didn't have another staff member around. I thought, oh, Jesus, kid might kill me. So I got a chance to get up. He had me on the floor, but I got a chance to come up. And then I just ran to the window. I'm like, oh my God, that guy's stealing that car. And that's all it took for that break, because that kid ran to the window to look out. No one was stealing a car. But as I said, I'm creative. It doesn't have to be that dramatic. It can be something, I've used something as simple if someone's coming in at me hot, name calling, not being nice, upset, angry. If they've got a picture or something on the wall, I say, is that your daughter? Like, was she in here? It just catches people off guard. Or this one guy told me I was a bitch, and I said, I don't know what's going on today. Like, my husband called me a bitch this morning too. Of course, my husband didn't call me a bitch, but this guy felt so sorry for me. He started being really nice to me. So that's what I mean. It just has to be a little bit unexpected from people. Like distraction, and it could be like it's a communication blocker. But in these situations, we're just looking for that pause, that place where someone could save face. So that we talk a lot about empathy, being empathic, a detached empathy, humor. Some people have a great sense of humor, and honestly, they can turn things around because they can just make it work. And with all these secrets, of course, you have to be careful. They can backfire. Praise, saying something nice to someone when they're not being nice. Again, it can catch them off guard. Silence is a lot of times it's just about not taking the bait. Okay, people are baiting you, just don't take the bait. Be a smart fish, just swim away. You don't have to, like we talked about, you don't have to pick up every invitation that people are giving you. And validation, just let people know they're not crazy. It's like, if I were you, I'd be really angry as well. This is like so unacceptable. I'd be furious, right? You just need to know you're not crazy to feel the way you feel. And honestly, healthcare is a pretty crazy making place. Like, it is terrifying for people. They're sick, they're ill, they can't be seen, they're waiting hours. Like, it is scary, and we are front facing. So these are just some of a taste of the secrets. But honestly, it's really just about understanding you just need to respond in a way that's unexpected, that's surprising, that's compassionate, that's not reactive, defensive, excuse making. Okay. And you'll find a lot of times this will be the solve in a lot of situations. And then I want to talk about the de-escalation I statement. So these aren't the I statements we learned in nursing school, and there is a place for them. I'm not discounting them, but the place for them is when people's prefrontal cortex is online and everyone's calm and can have a reasoned discussion. These are de-escalation I statements. So we want to minimize risk. We want to be very clear and concise. So if people are upset, they're escalating, short, concise, I'm here to help. I will fix this. I am here now. I will get help. I will figure this out. And then when you need to set limits on inappropriate behavior, just get very specific about what you need. And these statements are one part of a 7-step corrective conversational framework that I get nurses to practice and role play. So I need you to stop yelling. Okay, so you get very behaviorally specific. I need you to stop swearing. And then, of course, the corrective conversational framework goes into a lot of research components as to why they should do that, what's the consequences if they do and if they don't, and things like that. So people aren't ambushed, because I don't think anyone should be ambushed. Everyone should know what's going to go on and what's going to happen. um, in serious situations. Okay, so again, the I statements are about being clear and just being really short about what you need. Now, if someone's really hot, really aroused, out of their window of tolerance, they're yelling, they're name calling, and you're trying to say, when you call me names, I feel, and what they're going to tell you, what they're going to come back with, because I've witnessed it, because I've watched people walk into this trap. It's like, I don't give a fuck what you feel, lady, right? Like that just escalates them. So again, that's not the time for those kind of conversations. Those kind of conversations are when everyone's cool, when there's no risk of re-arousal. And that could take the end of the shift, or it could be next week when you're on again, or it could be never, okay? Because sometimes you just don't get a person calm enough, especially if you're just meeting them and you're in an emergency, someplace like that. You may never see them again. Okay, so I want you to use their name. Okay, so the name's really important. If someone's escalating, say their name, use it, repeat it, be a broken record. Names are neurological anchors. Okay, so don't, if you know a person's name, use it. You might whisper it, or you might match them in their intensity and then bring the room down. John, John, and then co-regulate the room. The law of reciprocity, what goes around comes around. Kindness begets kindness. Plant seeds even in unlikely soil, and a good deed never goes unrewarded. We are in a high stress profession, and we don't want people to be really angry and fixated on us. We want to maintain positive regard and positive relationships. Okay. So when you are trained and when you get this training, you won't rise to the occasion. You'll fall back on your training. These tools are your training. So what you want to do is you want to practice when it's quiet. You want to build your muscle memory in the calm moments so you can lead in the loud moments. You want to execute with precision under pressure, and when you slip, you want grace. So this is the full pathway, right? We learned 2 today: psychological self-protection, use pattern interruption techniques. We always want to get to the root cause, solve the problem. Learn the 7-step behavioral barricade process, which is part of my program. Resolve the root cause, revisit and reconcile relationships. Okay, don't leave on a bad tone. And final thoughts: healthcare is a violent industry. Nurses are an oppressed workforce, but we are not helpless. We can train ourselves and each other to handle this better. And I really just want you to stay safe out there, because it is an increasingly uncivil society, and we need to think and respond, not react. Thank you. So any questions?
I don't have many words, honestly, and it's very unlike me. I was just absolutely stunned by every time you said anything. These are strategies that I'm going to be able to, you can see all this feedback that you're getting. It's just outstanding. But I think these are strategies that we can use not only in our professional life, but in our personal life. And
absolutely, these transformed my practice when I started learning about them. Like, it transformed my life. It made me a different human being, and it made me move through the world differently. And as soon as I saw some of the things I teach in my bigger program, it's just like, nurses need to know this, you know. It's what we're missing. It's the missing piece in what we do. And I'm so glad to finally have lived long enough, number one, to finally really focus on it and really try to get it out in a comprehensive and cohesive way that nurses can get their head and their skills around, because educating the nursing workforce is difficult because of shift work. So hopefully creating something that really makes sense for everyone, that they can fit into their day.
well, I think we're not getting any questions in the chat, but I think if I'm not alone, I have a feeling that people are going to be rewatching this because I sure am. I took so many jewels from it. I can't even begin to identify all of them, but a couple of things kind of stuck with me. And it had to do with, I remember one time when I was working with a patient who had just been diagnosed with cancer. And the doc had been in there and, done his thing and then left. And I remember sitting on the side of the patient's bed and grabbing their hand and asking them how they were doing. and they started to cry, obviously,
Hmm.
and so did I, right?
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
and so we kind of went through this thing together, and the student was in the room, kind of over by the register, and we left the room after that. And I recall the student being so puzzled by the fact that I had cried alongside the patient.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I said to them, but that those tears were intentional. Like they were a human response, but I was in control of them.
Hmm.
I was feeling those for the patient, not for
Hmm.
myself. And
Yes.
it struck me when you started to talk about staying grounded and that the energy that you emit will be transferred to the situation. And that is part of what calms down the situation is your ability to control yourself. And
Hmm.
that's the biggest message I took from a lot of this is, the idea of they're throwing away at you perhaps what they can't carry. It's this understanding that it's not about you. It's about
Hmm.
the situation and it is about that person. So I just there's a few things. Can the slides be shared? Most certainly, we're going to upload the entire presentation to Nursing the Future. And
Hmm.
Kate, you've got a couple of questions, I think, in the chat. Do you want to share those?
Yeah, sure. So we have one question from Izzy. We are stuck in a circle of blame at work. How can we reset as a team?
Yeah, it's really, really difficult. Like I know there's so much toxic leadership going on right now and everyone's burnt out and it's really hard. Like I had to step away from my job. I just had to step away because I couldn't recover. Like sometimes we have to use our benefits and whatever we have just to step away from a while because that's kind of where we're at right now. I think you can lead from where you are, but it is really difficult if you're in an unsafe work situation. Um, I I have twice in my career I have impaled myself on the sword and knew I'd die on it. You have to really decide for yourself, what can I do? What do I have control over? And what do I not have control over? And I have one of my mentors is Margaret Wheatley, and she talks about creating islands of sanity. And she really got me through a lot of hard times because once I accepted that I cannot fix it, I cannot fix a collapsing system, I cannot fix all the problems that are going on, I can't fix people in Tim Hortons waiting for an emergency bed, but it's just like, what can I take control of? And honestly, that's how this program was born, is because what can I do that maybe will make a difference in a world that's quaking? Because according to Margaret Wheatley, and she knows the world, she's an organizational leader. She had nothing but confidence in the 80s and 90s. We were going to fix everything. And now she's saying, hey guys, I don't think we can fix it. Our civilization's collapsing. So how can we stay at peace, present, and navigate this world? So she just talks about creating islands of sanity. So probably in your workplace, if you can't fix the blame game, like if you can have some meaningful conversations. I found as a healthcare leader, if people, I worked in one place that was I came in toxic, I knew it was toxic. I'm good with culture. And I would come back to 20 letters from nurses bitching about each other or other staff members to other disciplines. And what I would do is, number one, if you're in any kind, don't triangulate. What I'm going to say, if you have a problem with someone, you owe them to have the conversation directly with them. Have it directly with them. If you cannot, go to your leader. And if your leader doesn't know better and might triangulate, say, I do not want you to triangulate this. I do not want you to talk to this person. I just need to talk to you about this situation. And then it's up to their integrity. But honestly, if 99% of the time when I was in leadership and nurses had a problem, I say, can you talk directly to the person about this? Most of the time they said, yeah, I can. Or do you need me to be in the room to facilitate a conversation between the two of you? And I will tell you, after a decade in leadership, and one of them super toxic, 100% of the time, those relationships were strengthened once we just put it on the table and had a conversation. We created strong bonds. It's generally it's the undercover thing, right? We're just having conversations behind closed doors. Someone's bitching about this person, bitching about this person, and no one's really talking to each other. And it's as simple as that, as simple as it sounds, it's having conversations with each other. So that's where you have to start. How can we fix this? This is what I'm noticing. I notice we're off. And I mean, it's hard. It's hard for all of us. You know, we have private, personal relationships that are fractured. So you have to decide, do I want to stay there? What's my responsibility here? And where can I create my own island of sanity? And that's what I've been doing. And I think that's all any of us can do in the healthcare environment we're walking through, besides getting skilled up and knowing how to deal with the intensity in our nervous systems.
Yeah, what a great response. And Izzy was giving lots of feedback that your response connected with her. Kate, are there any other questions or comments from the chat?
Yes. I have a question from Britt. In an escalated or abusive situation, how do you justify their behavior in your heart? Example, some may say that these more compassionate and patient responses can be seen as being okay with their behavior or excusing it instead of addressing it or correcting it.
Well, first of all, I do teach corrective conversations. So I do teach the skills to correct situations, but even I was a certified teaching parent where I learned the teaching interaction was really the core. It's adapted from that, from my mentors there. Even there, where the kids were literally holding a knife to my throat, breaking windows, punching holes through the wall, it was 5 effective conversation to 1 correction. So you had to make sure, and I would say if you want to maintain a positive relationship or stay on a positive side of something, you have to do that a lot more. So I teach effective conversations. So I teach catching them doing it right, which is a behavior boost. So it's a whole flip of the script. So you're not always coming in on correction, because if you're coming in on correction, people are just going to shut you down. They don't care. You're just negative Nelly. They don't care about what you say. But if you're coming in, catching them doing it right. So if you're on a behavioral unit, I understand that totally. You're concerned about reinforcing a behavior. If you're on a behavioral unit, hopefully there is some actual skill on that unit, although that's kind of gone the way of the dodo bird because we're drugging people more often. But if you are part of a good behavioral program, and I was part of a good behavioral program, it was there. We had to stay on a positive spiral. You can't stay on a positive spiral if you're always coming in on correction. And like I said, is it someone you really need to help them change their behavior? Is that your responsibility? Like I said, I can't get my husband and my children to do things that I want. So is it really my responsibility? Is this going to be a long-term? You have to look at the context, and I definitely do correction. Absolutely. I come in on correction. I correct physicians. It's called ethical resistance. And we talk about ethical resistance because when I talked to the the resistance researcher, Elizabeth Peters, and because I read her research, I said, what was the thing that surprised you most about nurses and ethical resistance? And she said, well, let's talk resistance in general. Nurses do not engage in acts of resistance. They just let things happen. And in really important situations where patients are getting harmed and killed, they stay quiet when they need to speak. So don't think I'm just saying, oh, this is not a kumbaya, everything's lovely. No, these are foundational skills. These are skills 1 and 2 of a 7-step. But when you know these things, when you can regulate yourself, when you know you live on the positive side of the street, when you come in on correction, because you've built those relationships, people know you, they trust you, they also listen to you when you speak. Otherwise, if you're just correcting everybody, does that make sense? Like, I'm not saying don't correct. Like, I've lost my temper. I have a temper. Like, my mother is a saint. She was a saint. She's dead now. But when she lost her temper, kids ran away, very far away, and I'm the same. I have a temper and I seldom lose it. I don't want to lose it. I want to be in control. But when I lose my temper, I want someone around me that can do what I do for everyone else, which is emotionally co-regulate me before I make some catastrophic decisions that destroy my life. We all need that. We all need that because we're human and we're going to lose our minds. If we're pushed against, if we're backed into a corner, we're going to fight. That's who we are. It's our biology. We need that fight in us. We don't live in a safe world. Like behavior, humans are violent.
You know, thanks, Wendy. I also heard in Britt's question, and maybe I misunderstood her question, but it's sort of how do you respond without taking it to heart, without feeling
Oh,
insult was, and I came back to one of your
sorry. Yeah.
no, no, no. This is just my interpretation, but one of your quips, and there were so many, I can't wait to revisit them. But one of them was insults are confessions, and I was really drawn to that one because I so often kind of take it personally, and I think just remembering for myself that this is about them. What they're saying is revealing something about them, not necessarily about me. So
Hmm.
that's kind of what I heard Britt saying is how do I stop it from getting to my heart? And
Yeah, I'm sorry, I did go off on a bit of a tangent. So that's what psychological self-protection is all about, and it's really working on it. It's using the strategies, using the visualization. We talk about permeability. Every cell has a unique boundary. Are you permeable? Are you semi-permeable? Are you unpermeable? And when you're getting into these hot things, you have to figure out how do I become unpermeable? It is the work. There's nothing simple about it. It doesn't matter if you're 75 or 17. It's the work. It's like you have to understand there's a negativity bias. You have to understand that if you're grabbing onto things and you're holding onto things, the work is not to, and it's not, you have to be able to listen to critical feedback. You have to be able to listen to what people are saying because we have Joe Harry's window, right? We have our private lives, we have our public life, we have our secret life, and we have our blind spots. And the only way we can illuminate our blind spots is if we're able to listen to people say things about us we don't know about ourselves. It's like, what? You know, it is the work and it's a lot. But if you don't start to do the work or you're not even aware of the work you have to do, you never get started. So one of the things I like to talk about is we've got this entire population that believes in determinism. And determinism is that your past dictates your future. But research tells us that actually it's prospection and a compelling vision for your future is much more powerful than anything that has happened in your past. And I mean anything. So if you're swimming in a lot of things you think you remember, you can look at Elizabeth Loft's research on memory. Whatever we're remembering is only 50% right, and chances are it's 100% wrong. So come up with a reason to live, come up with a reason to practice, come up with a reason to stay, have a compelling vision for your future, plan it with purpose, with intention. Take your pain, turn it into your purpose, take your mess, turn it into your message, but just be intentional. And that's what I do in my course. I craft a professional identity intentionally. And that provides that protection. That allows you to say, well, who am I? You don't have to let your auntie or your uncle or your friends from when you're 3 years old determine your identity anymore. If you're 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, you can craft your own identity. You can decide who you are. And when someone's coming at you with a lot of horrible, hard things, you'll just say, not today, you know. Or another saying is like, well, I would agree with you, but then we both be wrong. That's always a fun one. you know,
that's a good one. That's a
that's
great.
always a fun one. I use that quite a bit,
Thanks,
like
Wendy.
mostly with my husband, but
Well, I honestly just want to thank you. I learned so much. I know that there are a lot of individuals based on the comments and the questions and all of the emoticons that they took away so much from your session. So I just, on behalf of Nursing the Future and the nursing profession, I just want to thank you for the work that you've done and the work you're going to continue to do in this area. And again, thanks for being with us, Wendy.
thank you, Judy. And you were going to give away 10 seats. How will people know, or how will that go for
Yeah,
my cohort that's happening in January?
yeah, you bet. For the 10 spots, and this is a course that Wendy teaches, and NTF has purchased 10. spots in her course, and we will be giving them to individuals who participate in the evaluation. And I think I'm just going to put that evaluation information into the chat right now. And also there was one individual, I think, Kate, did you hear from that person who gets the book?
Yes, Lorraine Rideout has won the Gavin de Becker book, The Gift of Fear and Other Survival Signals That Protect Us from Violence. I haven't been able to connect with her, but we can reach her by another means if necessary. But Lorraine, if you're still got your volume on, please connect with us and we can get that delivered to you.
You can send
Okay,
a
and I just wanted to let you know, as Nursing the Future has been so kind to organize this and promote it so wonderfully, that I am launching my Soft Skills for Hard Situation founding cohort January 15th, 2026. It's a 12-month access, self-paced digital course, short on-demand videos available anytime for very busy nurses. And I'm going to be giving a $100 discount, $100 tuition reduction for anyone that comes to me through Nursing the Future, just so you know. And you can just, I don't have my landing page or anything set up. You can just email me at wendy@brainstormsoftskills.com. So if you caught wind of me anyway, before, after, or in some way, if you mention Nursing the Future, I will give you $100 off your tuition.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you so much, Wendy.
You've done such a great job, and I just really appreciate everything your organization is doing, and it's just so important. You know, we've got such a big gap in onboarding and skill acquisition for the landscape that we're dealing with. So I'm grateful.
Well, that's very kind. We're just entirely grateful to you. I'm going to put the information, so don't leave yet. I'm going to put the information about the evaluation. I'll also send a note to all participants that registered to give them the information about the evaluation. So I think we'll close that off now, Wendy, and I'll send that information to, actually, I think I'll just send it to everybody who was registered. That's probably easier than putting it in the chat at this point. So Wendy, congratulations. That was just such an outstanding session.
Thank you.
I'm entirely grateful and can't wait to hear from you again.
Thank you. I hope to have my book out in the new year if I can just find some time to finish it.
We'll all look forward to that.
Thank you so much. Take care.